Bell Hooks, Chapter 3, Honesty, Be True to Love. When we reveal ourselves to our partner and find that this brings healing rather than harm, we make an important discovery that intimate relationship can provide a sanctuary from the world of facades, a sacred space where we can be ourselves as we are. This kind of unmasking, speaking our truth, sharing our inner struggles, and revealing our raw edges is sacred activity, which allows two souls to meet and touch more deeply. John Wellwood. It is no accident that when we first learn about justice and fair play as children, it is usually in a context where the issue is one of telling the truth. The heart of justice is truth telling, seeing ourselves and the world the way it is rather than the way we want it to be. In recent years, sociologists and psychologists have documented the fact that we live in a nation where people are lying more and more each day. Philosopher Cicely Book's book, Lying Moral Choice, and Public and Private Life was among the first works to call attention to the grave extent to which lying has become accepted. The commonplace in our daily interactions, M. Scott Peck's The Road Less Traveled includes an entire section on lying. In The Dance of Deception, Harriet Lerner, another widely read psychotherapist, calls attention to the way in which women are encouraged by sexist socialization to pretend and manipulate, to lie as a way to please. Lerner outlines the various ways in which constant pretense and lying alienate women from their true feelings, how it leads to depression and loss of self-awareness. Lies are told about the most insignificant aspects of daily life. When many of us are asked basic questions like, "How are you today?" a lie is substituted for the truth. Much of the lying people do in everyday life is done either to avoid conflict or to spare someone's feelings. Hence, if you are asked to come to dinner with someone whom you do not particularly like, you do not tell the truth or simply decline. You make up a story. You tell a lie. In such a situation, it should be appropriate to simply decline if stating one's reason for declining might unnecessarily hurt someone. Lots of people learn how to lie in childhood. Usually they begin to lie to avoid punishment or to avoid disappointing or hurting an adult. How many of us can vividly recall childhood moments where we courageously practiced the honesty we had been taught to value by our parents, only to find that they did not really mean for us to tell the truth all the time? In far too many cases, children are punished in circumstances where they respond with honesty to a question posed by an adult authority figure. It is impressed on their consciousness early on then that telling the truth will cause pain, and so they learn that lying is a way to avoid being hurt and hurting others. Lots of children are confused by the insistence that they simultaneously be honest and yet also learn how to practice convenient duplicity. As they mature, they begin to see how often grown-ups lie. They begin to see that few people around them tell the truth. I was raised in a world where children were taught to tell the truth, but it did not take long for us to figure out that the adults did not practice what they preached. Among my siblings, those who learned how to tell polite lies or say what grown-ups wanted to hear were always more popular and more rewarded than those of us who told the truth. Among any group of kids, it is never clear why some quickly learn the fine art of dissimulation, that is taking on whatever appearance is needed to manipulate a situation, while others find it hard to mask true feelings. Since pretense is such an expected aspect of childhood play, it is a perfect context for mastering the art of dissimulation. Concealing the truth is often a fun part of childhood play, yet when it becomes a common practice, it is a dangerous prelude to lying all the time. Sometimes children are fascinated by lying because they see the power it gives them over adults. Imagine a little girl who goes to school and tells her children she is adopted, knowing all the while that it is not true. She revels in the attention received, both the sympathy and the understanding offered, as well as the frustration and anger of her parents when the teacher calls to talk about this newly discovered information. A friend of mine who lies a lot tell me she loves fooling people and making them act on knowledge that only she knows is untrue. She is 10 years old. When I was her age, I was frightened by lies. They confused me and they created confusion. Other kids poked fun at me because I was not good at lying. In the one truly violent episode between my mother and father, he accused her of lying to him. Then there was the night an older sister lied and said she was babysitting when she was actually out on a date. As he hit her, our father kept yelling, "Don't you lie to me." While the violence of this response created in us a terror of consequences of lying, it did not alter the reality that we knew he did not always tell the truth. His favorite way of lying was withholding. His motto was just remain silent. When asked questions, then you will not get caught in a lie. The men I have loved have always lied to avoid confrontation or take responsibility for inappropriate behavior. In Dorothy Denniston's groundbreaking book, The Mermaid and the Minotaur, Sexual Arrangements and Human Malice, she shares the insight that when a little boy learns that his powerful mother, who controls his life, really has no power within patriarchy, it confuses him and causes rage. Lying becomes one of the strategic ways he can act out and render his mother powerless. Lying enables him to manipulate the mother even as he exposes her lack of power. This makes him feel more powerful. Males learn to lie in a way of obtaining power, and females not only do the same, but they also lie to pretend powerlessness. In her work, Harriet Lerner talks about the way in which patriarchy upholds deception, encouraging women to present a false self to men and vice versa. In Dory Hollander's 101 Lies Men Tell Women, she confirms that while both women and men lie, her data and the findings of other researchers indicate that men tend to lie more and with more devastating consequences. For many young males, the earliest experience of power over others comes from the thrill of lying to more powerful adults and getting away with it. Lots of men share with me that it was difficult for them to tell the truth if they saw that it would hurt a loved one. Significantly, the lying many boys learn to do to avoid hurting mom or whomever becomes so habitual that it becomes hard for them to distinguish a lie from the truth. This behavior carries over into adulthood. Often men who would never think of lying in the workplace lie constantly in intimate relationships. This seems to be especially the case for heterosexual men who see women as gullible. Many men confess that they lie because they can get away with it. Their lies are forgiven. To understand why male lying is more accepted in our lives, we have to understand the way in which power and privilege are accorded men simply because they are males within a patriarchal culture. The very concept of being a man and a real man has always implied that when necessary, men can take action that breaks the rules, that is above the law. Patriarchy tells us daily through movies, television, and magazines that men of power can do whatever they want. That is this freedom that makes them men. The message given males is that to be honest is to be soft. The ability to be honest and indifferent to the consequences makes a male hard, separates the men from the boys. John Stoltzberg's book, The End of Manhood, a book for men of conscience, analyzes the extent to which the masculine identity offered men as the ideal in patriarchal culture is the one that requires all males to invent and invest in a false self. From the moment little boys are taught they should not cry or express hurt, feelings of loneliness, or pain, that they must be tough, they are learning how to mask true feelings. In worst case scenarios, they are learning how to not feel anything ever. These lessons are usually taught to males by other males and sexist mothers. Even boys raised in the most progressive, loving households where parents encourage them to express emotions, learn a different understanding about masculinity and feelings on the playground, and in a classroom playing sports or watching television, they may end up choosing patriarchal masculinity to be accepted by other boys and affirmed by male authority figures. It is important work rediscovering masculinity. Excuse me. Victor Siegler stresses, when we learn to use language as boys, we very quickly learn how to conceal ourselves through language. We learn to master language so that we can control the world around us. Even though we learn to blame others for our unhappiness and misery in relationships, we also know at some unspoken level how our masculinity has been limited and injured as we touch the hurt and pain of realizing how little we seem to feel about anything. Estrangement from feelings makes it easier for men to lie because they are often in a trance state, utilizing survival strategies of asserting manhood that they learned as boys. This inability to connect with others carries with it an inability to assume responsibility for causing pain. This denial is most evident in cases where men seek to justify extreme violence towards those less powerfully, usually women, by suggesting that they are the ones who are really victimized by females.